Hi, my name is Bob Hill. I'm the president of the Church of Scientology Mission of Riverdale at 308 Broadview Avenue in Toronto. Scientology is a practical religion. It teaches a person how to know. It's really important to understand that. So it doesn't force you to know something, it teaches you how to know. In fact, that's what the word itself means, knowing how to know. The idea is that by increasing one's awareness around him and having him look outward and giving him the tools to do that, he will be able to know and understand. All right? So it's not an enforced knowingness. It's not an enforced reality on you. It's not a enforced belief system. It teaches you how to know, and you can make your own decisions. Okay? Good stuff. Now, today we're going to take up something that during this time period has probably increased in many people's lives, and that's drugs. So what is a drug, and how does it affect the mind? And would you like to help someone handle a drug problem? So I'm going to go over with you today what drugs do to the mind and how they affect it, but I'm also going to give you a solution on how to help someone who has that issue. Okay? Good stuff. You probably would like to help someone who has a drug or alcohol problem. Today's sermon is based on the writings of L. Ron Hubbard, and it's from the Scientology Handbook, Chapter 7, Answer to Drugs. Now, before we get into how to handle the drugs, we should understand what they are and what they do. Does that make sense to you? I'm sure it does. So, drugs are essentially poisons. An example would be, let's take alcohol. Alcohol is used to preserve animals in laboratories. When a frog is dead or they're dissecting a frog, they put its body in alcohol to preserve it. Now, based on that datum alone, is that something that's good to put in your body? I think not, unless you're a dead frog. And I don't think I'm talking to too many dead frogs right now. So that's one example. Another example is the degree they are taken determines the effect. A small amount gives a stimulant, that's an increase in activity. A greater amount acts as a sedative, suppresses activity. You've seen that. Guys are taking drugs or alcohol and you see them falling asleep on the street, or you may have seen it in your own home. A guy starts, or a girl starts taking a drug and they feel like kind of just lying down and chilling out, falling asleep or doing nothing. So a large amount of a drug acts as a poison and can kill you. This is true of any drug. Each requires a different amount. Now, a common drug is caffeine. So coffee is an example. 100 cups of coffee would probably kill a person. 10 cups would probably put him to sleep. 2 or 3 cups might stimulate him. This is a very common drug. It's not very harmful as it takes so much of it to have an effect. So it is known as a stimulant. Arsenic is known as a poison. Yet a tiny amount of arsenic is a stimulant. A good-sized dose puts one to sleep, and a few grains kills one. Now, arsenic is being put in some of the drugs that are on the street as a filler. But there are many drugs which have another liability. They directly affect the mind. Now, in order to have a good understanding of the mental effects of drugs, it is necessary to know something about what the mind is. The mind is not a brain. It is the accumulated recordings of thoughts, conclusions, decisions, observations, and perceptions of a person throughout his entire existence. Now, in Scientology, it has been discovered that the mind is a communication control system between a Thetan, the spirit, and his environment. By Thetan is meant the person himself, the spiritual being, not his body or his name, the physical universe, his mind, or anything else. So the Thetan is the spirit, the guy himself. It's not the physical universe, not his mind, not anything else. The most obvious portion of the mind is recognizable by anyone who's not in serious condition. This is called mental image pictures. So your mind is composed of mental image pictures. It has a lot of them in there, thousands. Now, when a person uses a drug such as marijuana, peyote, opium, morphine, or heroin, mental image pictures of times past can turn on or re-stimulate below the individual's conscious awareness. So these pictures kick in, they're below your awareness, and it's causing him to perceive something different than what is actually going on. Now, what does that mean to you, or what does it mean to me, or what does it mean to anyone? Let's take a guy who he's got a really bad situation in life, he's broke, he doesn't seem to be able to find a job, or anytime he finds a job, he loses it. And so what he does is I got to handle this stress, so I'm going to go smoke pot. So he smokes the marijuana, and then he's like, hey, everything's kind of cool, and nothing's really happening, and I feel really good. But the reality is, the actual scene that's going on in the physical universe is not what's going on in his mind. So the marijuana has re-stimulated some mental image pictures on the guy. He doesn't know about it. He's living in not a good scene, but he's like, oh, everything's chilled, I don't really care. That's how drugs can affect your mind. So you don't really look at what's real and what's really going on and solve the problems of now. So that's right there before your eyes, apparently in the same room as you. You are doing the same things. The drug taker is really only partially there and partially in some past events. You got it? So he's not really there with you. He's actually in the past event. That's quite interesting when you look at it. So the more drugs and so on that you flow into the society, the more and more you're having people being out of present time and in these past events and talking to you and communicating to the world around them from these past events. I would say something should be done about that. Do you agree? Sure you do. You're probably nodding your heads right now. I mean, do you want to drive down the expressway or the highway knowing that a guy has smoked marijuana or done some other drug? He's driving a car and he's not really in the same particular point in time that you're in. Maybe he thinks he's, feeling that the car is a spaceship, but he doesn't, or an airplane that he was riding, but he's not even aware that he's in that particular thing. That could lead to some serious complications, let's just put it that way. He seems to be there, but really he isn't tracking. He's not with present time. What is going on to a rational observation is not what's going on to him. Thus, he does not understand statements. You see that with people who have taken you know, well, I'll give you an example of a work-related situation. There's a person I know that has a construction company, and they have apprenticeship programs in the construction company. They teach guys a trade. There's one fellow came in, and you know, he is a chronic pot smoker. Smokes marijuana every day of his life. At night goes home, smokes marijuana. So he's on the apprenticeship program, but from one day to the next, he can't retain the information he got the day before. So he's making all kinds of stupid mistakes during his apprenticeship, and underlying it, you find out that the guy's in a chronic state of being under the influence of the drug marijuana. So it messed up his whole apprenticeship program. He could no longer be on the program because he couldn't keep up. He couldn't retain information. So here you have a guy who had a good future set up for him. A company that was willing to take this guy and make him into an excellent tradesman. You know, suffice to say, good masons make $60,000 to $100,000 a year. And he's stuck in a low-income job because he can't use himself correctly because of the drugs blocking it off. That's an example, and that's a real-life example that I know of. You probably have seen more yourself. Maybe you've worked around someone who's on drugs and so on. You find out you're not getting a rational reaction to the situation around you. So, thus, the guy, he does not understand statements made by another, but tries to fit them into his composite reality. Meaning a reality made up of different components. Now, in order to fit them in, he has to alter them, you know. So you have the guy on the apprenticeship program who couldn't get through it. So that's what the drugs do to the mind. Now, what can you do about them? So here you are, you know the guy's got a drug issue and he's taking, you know, it could be any kind of a drug. The really serious ones are kind of scary, the heroin, crack, cocaine, and so on. These things can really do a lot of damage. However, there are things you can do. So when the world went into heavy drug abuse, the problem of drying out became one of the first orders. All pre-Scientology efforts to help drug users failed and had been failing throughout man's history. So, however, workable solutions have been developed in Scientology which enable a person not only to cease drug use, but to reach and eradicate the root causes which started him or her down that dark road. Now, obviously, the first thing you have to do is have the person's agreement to do something about it. That's the most basic thing. If he doesn't want to do anything about it, sadly, he will just keep taking the drugs and that'll be his own plight. However, if he wants to do something about it and change his condition and do better in life, well, there are things he can do. Now, drugs extract a dreadful price from the user, and should he ever try to quit, that's the other thing. This is called withdrawal symptoms. They set in. These are the physical and mental reactions to no longer taking drugs. They're ghastly. No torturer ever set up anything worse. And don't kid yourself. There are withdrawal symptoms from things as simple as marijuana. You do get withdrawals. So you want to take care of that. So you got the person now, they say, well, I'd like to stop taking the drugs. I don't like the fact I have to take them every day to just get along in life. So the person has a choice: stay on drugs and be trapped and suffering from here on out, or try to come off the drugs and be so agonizingly ill meanwhile that he couldn't stand it. This was a dead if you do, dead if you don't set of problems. Medicine did not solve it adequately. Psychotherapy was impossible. So two approaches now exist to this withdrawal system, both of which should be used. Nutritionist experts indicate that vitamins and minerals assist the withdrawal. And then light, what we call objective processes, which get a person back in touch with the physical universe. Objective means simply objective. They're not thinkingness processes. They're things like being able to see that the wall is actually a wall. A drug user may look at a wall and think, well, it's actually a whatever. He doesn't really know what it is. So this puts him back in communication. Now, the exact amount of vitamins you should take is actually covered in the Scientology handbook that I mentioned to you earlier. And the whole area, Answers to Drugs chapter, gives you the exact breakdown on what vitamins you should take, and also tells you what objective processes to do to help you to withdraw. So there it is. I've given you the solutions here. They're there. They're in front of you. If you have a friend you'd like to help and they keep telling you, well, I just can't stop it, or I just can't stop using it, I have to smoke it every day, or I have to have a drink a couple of times a day just to keep my nerves handled, then if they really want to get help, if you get a whole copy of this book, and even if you get a copy only of the chapter, The Answers to Drugs, you can help the guy. Okay? Great. Help is a pretty big thing. So to those of you who want to do that, help is available. All right? Great. Now, I'm going to read to you the creed of the Church of Scientology to end the sermon. We of the Church believe that all men of whatever race, color, or creed were created with equal rights. That all men have inalienable rights to their own religious practices and their performance. That all men have inalienable rights to their own lives. That all men have inalienable rights to their sanity. That all men have inalienable rights to their own defense. That all men have inalienable rights to conceive, choose, assist, or support their own organizations, churches, and governments. That all men have inalienable rights to think freely, to talk freely, to write freely their own opinions, and to counter or utter or write upon the opinions of others. That all men have inalienable rights to the creation of their own kind. That the souls of men have the rights of men. That the study of the mind and the healing of mentally caused ills should not be alienated from religion or condoned in non-religious fields, and that no agency less than God has the power to suspend or set aside these rights overtly or covertly. And we of the Church believe that man is basically good, that he is seeking to survive, that his survival depends upon himself and upon his fellows and his attainment of brotherhood with the universe. And we of the Church believe that the laws of God forbid man to destroy his own kind, to destroy the sanity of another, to destroy or enslave another's soul, to destroy or reduce the survival of one's companions or one's group. And we of the Church believe that the spirit can be saved, and that the spirit alone may save or heal the body. Now, that's the end of today's sermon. But on a personal note, I'm going to tell you this. You may ask yourself, well, how can this guy talk to me about getting off drugs? Or how can this guy insist this? Well, the truth is I have personal experience with it. And there was a time when that actually occurred with me and very close to me. I used this procedure many, many years ago. We're talking 46 years ago, to help rid myself of the effects. And spiritually, I'm doing 100 times better than ever. I kept going. I got rid of the effects of drugs I have friends that did the same thing. They got rid of it. Sadly, I have friends who didn't get rid of it. And to be honest with you, just the other day, I looked back on and what happened to some of those people. Surprisingly, a good portion of them are no longer with us. And now, do I blame the drugs directly? In 4 of the cases, yes. So I'm asking you to take a good look at this and take a look at stepping out of the norm, stepping out of this culture that we live in, which is drug crazed, and look at doing something about it. You're going to see something come on the screen hereafter, and it's going to tell you how to get your hands on this book and get a hold of this information. Please take advantage of it, and we can help you. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.